classes, and the ones that we had wasn't working right, so we bought a new PowerPoint projector. We bought a new adapter for our computers so we could use that equipment, and we use that out of the one grant fund.
And the one capital need that you've got is basically your vehicles, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And that's a shot in the dark for me because, I mean, right now the vehicle's running great. It still only has 60-some thousand miles on it. So when I first put in, I think 3 years ago, for the 3 to 5 year capital, I was trying to guesstimate mileage and vehicle condition and all that stuff. But as of right now, it's in good shape. So 2026 may be not even realistic. It may be more like 27, 28, 29. I don't know. But I don't think it's necessarily something we need to talk about this year, even maybe even next year. But just wanted to put it on your radar.
Thank you.
And that would be a replacement, not an additional vehicle.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Jason?
So this is one, if you're not going to replace the pickup and get an SUV, you're saying you're going to replace the pickup with an SUV?
Correct. Yep.
There's one vehicle.
Yes. Yep.
Anybody else? Jason, thanks for coming in and appreciate you, especially because it's nice for the full council to get to see you here. We don't get to see you very often, so
Right.
thanks again.
Thank you. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
No wind damage to respond to today, or
Getting calls right now for, trees and power lines.
are
in the
they?
county. So we'll see what happens.
There's an umbrella down across the street in the little park there also. You want to take care of that. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you. Okay, Holly, in the clerk's office.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
All right, I got several budgets, so we'll just hit things one by one. I'm going to start off with my clerk's budget. So I think the only highlight, I'm going to reiterate the same thing Sandy said. I went ahead with 6%, knowing that, my employees were getting hit with a 51% increase, a lot of them in health insurance and 30% in another. So they're going to be behind the 8 ball once again. Other than that, I don't have anything big in my clerk's budget to discuss unless you guys see something in that one. Okay. We'll move on to my election budget. Once again, nothing big in this one. No elections next year. Cross your fingers. No schools decide to do referendums or anything like that. But I always budget money in there just in case, like I said, a school would decide to hold a referendum and we have to budget for an election. That way I don't have to come back and ask you guys for an additional appropriation. So I guess if you have to cut anything, look at my election budget. Just don't cut the election board, because even though we don't have an election, they do meet sometimes during non-election years when I have elected officials who keep their campaigns open and decide not to file their campaign finance report, and we have to hold hearings and set fines. Perpetuation budget. For those that don't know, the perpetuation budget can only be used for specific things. That's not taxpayer dollars. Those are user fees that I collect on every court cost that are filed in the county. Can only be used for maintaining court records, computer systems, stuff like that. So this is going to see an increase because we do have a new clerk coming in next year. So once again, we have to buy a whole bunch of file stamps for every court, all my staff. I buy them for the courts too when people file stuff in open court. Various documents we'll have to put the new clerk's name on, stuff like that. So that's where my biggest increase is in office supplies and stuff like that.
Do you have to do the same thing since you got a new judge coming in too? Or does that just not affect you?
It doesn't really affect me. I mean, we have a lot of forms and things we have to change that has the judge's name on it, but we don't have we do have a couple physical stamps of his. So either I'll pay for him or the court will.
Okay, thank you.
Probably I'll end up paying for him. The clerk's 4D incentive fund, I don't think there was any major changes in there. That's federal money we receive for our portion of child support that's 4D related. So that's my highlights on my budget. Now I want to talk about my 5-year plan and some other expenses that we have coming up that I think is the biggest issue. So just for my 5-year plan in CUME-CAP, I have put in to have an office remodel, update, renovation, whatever you want to call it, done. The treasurer's office has been redone, the auditor's office, the bathrooms. So on the second floor, the clerk's office is the only office that has not been redone. So I think it's time. 2025, we've discussed with the new clerk, would be the best time. It's not an election year, so that's just a lot of relief off of our office. I didn't really go out and get estimates because if you're not going to give me the money, an estimate last year wouldn't be good a year or two from now. I kind of went off of what Sandy did because the company that did her office did a phenomenal job. And if they're going to do the clerk's office, that's the one I want because the other person, I tell you, I wouldn't have paid him if he had done my house. I've seen the shoddy work. So, and we can't have it linger out. I think Lita's took 6 months to get done. I can't have that, and I have to be very strategic when I have someone in my office because we have a lot of federal tax information from people that if they're working while we're working, I have to make sure they can't see access to our computers and stuff like that. So it's going to be a tricky situation in certain areas of our office to have outsiders who have not passed the federal background checks and stuff in our office. So I just threw this figure out there knowing of what I've paid at my house when I've done remodeling and the size of my office. So not saying this is 100% accurate, but I think it's pretty close on what it would cost. I don't have any new carpeting. One of my offices has new carpeting. Otherwise, the other 5 areas do not. So carpeting, painting, plasterwork. We need some ceiling fans in there to circulate the, heat, air conditioning. And then a lot of our workstations are exactly like your council table is. It's all built in. It's not really good for the new computers and everything now. We've all got 2 monitors. Some of us could use 3. I've got a couple tall ladies that they barely fit under the desk because you'll notice those are lower than a standard desk. So those are some options I've just put in there for that. Any questions on that before I move on to my next thing? Okay. My next one is new voting equipment. So I've been putting this in my 5-year plan for a few years now. I'm going to pass out to you guys. So our voting panels we are estimating they're at least 20, 25 years old. So how I refer to our voting equipment is it's basically a calculator. I don't call it a computer, can't be hooked up to the internet, doesn't have Bluetooth, doesn't have all of that fancy stuff. It's an adding calculator that I have on my desk that I add up checks on. I've not had an adding machine for 20 or 25 years. Usually replace them every 3 to 4 years. So I think it's reasonable to expect that we need to replace our voting equipment. I've attached a letter from Microvote that they had sent me, letting me know what we need to do and that we should be doing it sooner rather than later. It had been in my 5-year plan to do it by the next presidential year, which would be 2028, I believe. Yep. But they think we should have them in place by 2026. So I have attached the quote that they have given to us. We can do a 2-year plan. You'll pay $117,600 due in 2025 and 2026. Or if you choose, you can go through a 3-year plan and do the $78,400 for 25, 26, and 27. That's up to you guys. We will have the equipment to use in 2026. I discussed this with Rick. Rick had asked me, can we reduce the number of voting machines? So I talked to Microvote, and we ran through the numbers. Rick was saying, we've moved from precinct voting to vote centers. Can we reduce them? Answer was no. Everything is based on your registered voter numbers. So DeKalb County has approximately 30,000 registered voters. You have to use, we do early voting 29 days prior to the election. Those are machines you cannot use on election day. So based on the number of areas where we're at, we of course do the county, and then we do a couple Saturdays at other locations throughout the county, a couple evening hours. So you have to rotate through your machines. You only want about 200 to 300 voters on a machine. So based on those numbers, we are really sitting with the correct number of voting machines we have right now at 84. So these numbers are based on the current number of voting machines we have.
Holly, the other, and maybe you already answered this, but I had asked whether or not we could buy half of them this year and half of them next year, but it really is best if we get them all at the same time.
Correct. And their thing was, well, you're getting them ahead of time and you can do the payment plan. That's why
Okay,
they
so
do the payment
they are
plan.
just splitting the payments, not the delivery of the
Correct.
equipment. Okay.
Correct.
Now
We'll
I
get all of
understand.
our equipment and have it ready to use in 2026.
And-
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I was just gonna, are these just all paid for out of general, or is there other, but, I don't know. I'm
That's for
asking.
you guys to decide whether you want to pay them out of general or cum cap or what. You know, you're looking at 235,000, so.
And it is both the same, whether we pay a 3-year plan or a 2-year plan.
Correct. Interest-free. Yeah,
Okay.
if you add the numbers, there's no interest or
And
anything.
my other question is, you said there's 30,000 registered voters? Mm-hmm. How many voted this election? How many voted this election?
69.
6,900? Yeah.
Pathetic, Bill.
What was
It's
it?
Absolutely.
Was it even
pathetic.
20%? I don't know. I looked through the numbers.
It
and-
was just under 25%.
But the regulation
24%,
doesn't
something like that.
But
account
we
for how
have-
many vote, it's how many registered.
How many registered? Because you have to plan for, you always plan for the best case scenario. in
Everyone will
this
show
case.
up some year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, you have to, when we look at that, even on a good year, when we have, you know, this fall, hopefully, fingers crossed, we might hit 70% voter turnout. You have a ton of,
2016, we had 11,000 people vote. The last two elections, we've not been able to get 7,000
On the main election or on the primaries?
on an election.
and you have to figure out, we've got a ton of people on our voter rolls who sign up to vote but have never voted once in their life. I looked when I got to be in this office and learned this, and I'm like, how come we're not taking these people off the voter rolls? Because they've never been an active voter, so they don't get in the system to be removed. Because, you know, we remove voters who have voted and then they haven't voted for like 12 years. They get removed. But people who sign up and never vote stay on the voter rolls forever. So then that inflates our numbers and then makes our turnout look lower because, you know, they're not voting.
When do you purge those numbers, maybe through death or whatever? How do you know, or when does that occur?
So for like death, you can't just come in and say, hey, my dad died, we got to take him off. We work with the Social Security office. They report to our statewide system. We also get monthly reports from the health department, quarterly reports from Social Security. If somebody would walk in and we don't have, you know, say you walk in and say your dad died and we still have him on the rolls, you could bring us a death certificate. Everything has to be legal and published, so we go through the paper every day. We go through the local funeral homes, online obituaries, and we take them off through that. Those are legal means to remove somebody who has passed away. And then the state, every 2 years, on the odd number of years, does a voter list maintenance. So they'll send you a postcard. You know, I get one at my address, and as long as it gets delivered and we're good, I'm an active voter. But if it gets returned that says, you know, mailed it, Holly doesn't live here anymore, it comes back to the state, they send a second mailing out. If it comes again, then we start the procedure of, hey, do you not live here anymore? We're going to make you inactive, and then you stay inactive for several years before you actually get removed. So it's not like people get removed just like that. It's probably 8 years before you even get removed from the system, if you haven't voted or anything like that. Okay. Any more questions on the voting machines?
Just a
before we-
second. If we agreed to move forward on this, do we have, what's the time frame? That's what I want to really know.
We will have them delivered by the end of next year, end of 2025, because we'll have to get them prepared for the 26th primary election.
And so in other words, we have to within the next few months, get them ordered? Or is that what the timeline?
I mean, your budgets are going to be done, October, November, you'll know. So then I'll pull
Yeah.
the trigger and say, all right, go ahead, we got the money, place the order, and
So we're
They'll say,
not
"Make your
under any
payment."
obligation to get this thing signed and off to them before we actually approve next year's
no, you've got
budget.
plenty of time, yeah.
And there's no interest if we split it up into 2 years or 3 different years.
Nope.
Anybody else, any questions or comments for
What
Holly?
happens to the old machines, Holly?
They take them back. I mean, I can't just, hey, I got a voting machine, you guys want to buy, sell it
Right.
out? Yeah.
I didn't
No.
know if there was just a certain procedure of,
Yes, we have to, even like when we had our poll pads, which are basically just Apple iPads, I can't destroy them or anything. I have to give them back to the vendor. The vendor has a process they go through, and then what they do with it from there, I don't know. But it's, once again, chain of custody to make sure this stuff isn't out in the hands of people who shouldn't have it.
And, this past year, we've got the new printers that go along with the voting machines, the new cases and everything. These new voting machines will actually fit where the old voting machine
It's
is
just the
in that
panel
case.
part.
Yeah, it's just the computer piece is all being changed. The printer stays, the case stays, all of that, and the state paid for the printers, am I correct?
Yes, we didn't pay for the VVPAPs, that's the voter verified audit paper trail, or the cases that store everything. That was all done through the state. That wasn't right. Yeah. They're $1,
Oh, those are.
Yeah. I got 10 pairs laying around. All right. All good with that before I move on to my next thing?
is. I said you keep asking about
I
it.
just wanna make sure
Spend
that-
it.
Oh, yeah, we got 6
by the end
months
of the year.
to finish it, so.
Absolutely, yeah. That's good.
So yesterday, Susan addressed the stipend that the auditors received in this year's past legislation. The clerks also received a stipend. It's a per diem for a clerk who serves as voter registration officer, which I do. We do not have a voter registration board in this county. So the county fiscal body may provide the circuit clerk who serves as the county chief voter registration official with a stipend up to $2,500 each year a general election is held. So as we discussed it yesterday, that's not every year. General elections are basically held every other year. So this year would be a general election, presidential. Next year, there's no election held, so the clerk wouldn't receive this additional stipend at that time. Following year, in 2026, will be midterm elections. Clerk would receive that. And then the following year, 2027, is a city-town election. That's not considered a general election year, so the clerk would not receive the stipend at that time. So this is retroactive. It goes into effect July 1st, 2024. Which we are now past that. So I just provided you a copy of all of the documents I received at our clerks conference in June regarding the stipend. I discussed it with Rick. He was familiar with the legislation, so I brought it to his attention. So I am going to be asking for an additional appropriation since it's retroactive to this year and I am in a major presidential election, which all of the voters climb out of the woodwork to vote. Our voter registration always goes up during a presidential year. So I just wanted to give you that information now. So when I submit it and you have it at your August council meeting, you'll know what I'm talking about.
So you're going to submit the additional for in the clerks or the election, which location?
I would assume clerk, because technically voter registration falls under the clerk's duties. So it would be under the clerk's budget, because that's where my other one is paid from.
So let me think about this.
There's a list of,
Well, what I'm thinking is we may not actually have to pay and advertise an additional appropriation. I can do a salary ordinance amendment, which I will need to do to put this in, which is not a big deal, and go ahead and get it through and get it paid. And then prior to December's meeting, we can revisit it. And if there's not $2,500 able to be able to be transferred from someplace, then at that time we could do the additional, and so we don't pay money that we don't have to.
That's fine. You can tell me the best way to work it out. I just
So-
wanted to put it on everybody's radar.
Yeah, let's not do the additional right now.
Okay.
And then I'll get the salary ordinance amendment updated, and then we'll get it out to you.
All right. I think that's
Anybody else?
it.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Holly? Good presentation. Thanks, Holly, and appreciate you presenting the statute.
Yep,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
And we'll miss you next year.
What?
And we'll miss you next year.
Oh, well, I'll miss you guys too.
As you move on to the sunset,
Okay, next up is Sheila Stonebreaker in the Assessor's Office. Welcome, Sheila.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So I have two budgets. I have an assessor budget and I have a reassessment budget. On the assessor budget, that's the smaller budget that has things coming out of it. There was some things that I did not make any change at all from what was approved last year. Then I have some that's staying at the 4%. And then for the salaries, that's where I'm going with the 6%. I know you guys have heard it over and over already with the insurance going up. And my office, my staff has a lot of time, a lot of years that they've been in my office. There's a great deal of knowledge that my staff has, and I would like to retain them, and I think that the 6% is warranted on that increase. If you move to the reassessment budget, again, I'm doing the 6% on the salaries like I just explained on the assessor side, and the only thing that is higher than the 4%, again, I had some that I did not make any change for what I'm requesting. It's just like it was last year. Then the 4% items, but I do have one, which is for the printing and the mailing of the F11s that go out every April. And there is an increase that I'm requesting of 11% for that. I got with my vendor and was trying to get an idea on what they're anticipating it's going to cost this next year. So that's where that 11% is coming in. And a good share of that is just because postage going up. One other thing I would like to discuss also, for my PETA BOA board, currently they get $175 per day when we have hearings. I would like that increased to $200 per day. These are professionals and they're taking, their days out of their own profession to come here and sit on this board, and I think that they deserve the $200 rather than the $175 per day.
How often do they meet?
Any year can be different, but I would say on average 2, maybe 3 times a year.
Not frequently.
No, it's not like it's once a month or, yeah. So it's not too often, but I do think that they deserve that extra for those hearings.
How long does your hearings last?
That's another thing. You just never know either. There's been times where it's been the whole entire day. There's been times where it's been 2:30 and they were done. There's been times where, by noontime, you don't know. Because I can send out 30 or 40 notices of the hearing date is being scheduled, And you might have 6 that show up, or you might have 26 that show up. You don't know. You don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Sheila?
Not,
About the contractual services, just so everybody here understands the $222,000.
Yeah, that includes the reassessment of the entire county. They're field people that are out because my staff can't be in the office and out in the field too, you know. And so they deal with our reassessment. They help with the ratio study. If there's any kind of issue with the state as far as the DLGF and all of everything that goes along with the reassessment, they're there to help deal with that. It also includes picking up new construction. And within that, I also have legal. So if I have to have an attorney either come to Peterborough or go to the IBTR or go to tax court, anything, there's no extra cost to that. That's all included within that contract that we have.
the, while Sheila is still here, we asked Jeff, was there one of the funds that looked like it needed additional attention, whether it be going under, going too much, and he did address the reassessment fund specifically. And now how we are going to need to address that, I'm not sure, but because what she has as expenses is necessary, but the fund itself has an excessive amount of money in it. So how do we prevent additional being added to that? If I understood what Jeff was telling us correctly.
Correct. He was saying that you can you can adjust the rate at the amount that the
Tax
revenue
rate.
is figured
Okay.
to go to reassessment, health fund, whatever. And he had suggested to reduce the reassessment rate and increase the health rate to try and level that
Okay,
out.
so that'll be done at a different time than
Yeah,
right now, so,
if you guys do it.
yeah. I just wanted to make sure that.
I wasn't aware of any of that. I wish I would have known.
Well, and it was a question we asked when Jeff was here, and that's what the one he brought up, is that one probably has excessive amount in it. So we certainly don't want to
Well, because there is a lot of money in there. There's 2.6 million in that fund right now. And the budget is what, about 550?
do.
So it could cover multiple years.
So that's just something we need to keep in mind as we move on budgets.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Sheila? Thank you, Sheila. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Okay, Dottie, we're a little early. Do you want to go next? Would be happy to have you. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure you don't want to go through this line by line by line, but Amy Prosser came over. We discussed it before we sent it over to the auditor's office. But a couple things I would like to point out is that between the commissioners and Amy, we would really like to increase the hours in our office to 37.5 hours per week. And so in order to accomplish that,
Hold your thought just.
yeah, I'll hold my thought.
the paperwork that you're looking for will be after the sheriff's packet.
Quit tricking and looking at me.
She knows you. Yeah. Anyway, so it would be like on page, probably page 3, where we have the administrative assistant's wages, and I wrote in 37.5 hours weekly. But we also wanted to keep that overtime straight time line item, which is on page 1 for $1,000. Anything over, right now, 37 hours, we're having to use that overtime straight time line item. And so I would think that we would continue to do that. Most of our overtime, at least for that position, has been during open enrollment for the health plan, as you can imagine, with meetings, the meetings that we have after hours, or just the extra amount of time that we have to put in for data entry at the open enrollment time. Let's see. There were many accounts where there was nothing. We didn't change anything. But if you look at, it's page 6, and that is repair.
They don't have your pages, it's different.
Okay.
So-
It would be under repair and maintenance supplies, and that is account number 22310. We depleted another the building repair and maintenance account that we have never used. When I came on board, the auditor at the time, and I looked at our budget, and we pulled out a lot of accounts, put them into the HR budget because there never was an HR budget before, and now 8.5 years later, we need to finally, start to clean up some of this stuff. So we removed that from building repair and maintenance and threw that $500 into this repair and maintenance supplies, which is, who knows what that will go for. It might be nice to have, of course, we don't know what the commissioners will be doing with the annex building. Might that be new carpeting for the assistance area? My flooring is this tongue and groove stuff that Cruz had installed way back in the 80s. So who knows what that might be. If they will be moving us or whatever, but I'd kind of like to have, so we just decided to get rid of the other building repair and maintenance line and threw that amount of money over in this one. I think we have $25,000 in our consultant fees area. That is mostly Wagner, Irwin, and Shealy, the company, the consulting firm who does our job classification subcommittee work. And so far this year, we have only utilized them $2,000. So if we're not expecting to do a huge wage salary review for next year, we decided to keep it at $25,000. But if we're thinking that we really won't even do anything like that, maybe we could, further down the line, reduce that and move that money over to furniture. Because the furniture that I inherited in that office really could be upgraded. And we have checked with Larry, looked in the basement. He has checked. There's nothing that is appropriate that we could use. And so we pointed that out when Amy was over. And we only put in $2,000 in our furniture budget. However, we had Bassett's come take a look, see what they have. His quote was $8,000, but I'm sure that there are things that we could pull out and it would be far less than $8,000. But it's, at least you have to have a number from which to work. So another item that I would like to point out is account number 34140. That is our software maintenance. Honestly, we do not upgrade any of our software, and the only software that we had been using extra was our anti-harassment training through a third-party vendor. By the way, don't forget to please take your anti-harassment training and get your certificate into Morgan. Anyway, so we're no longer using that third-party vendor. We're using IPEP. IPEP is our work comp carrier, but in addition to work comp, they have a bunch of safety training that comes as a part of the package. And so y'all want fries with that order, and it's free. So we are trying to utilize that right now with the anti-harassment training that for the month of July. And so there's no extra charge for it. So we could save ourselves $100, $120. So that's why that one is at zero. The other item there at the end is really new furniture for the HR assistance area, and then looking down maybe next year, upgrading the furniture in the HR director area. So something to look at down the road. So those are the points that I wanted to bring out. If anybody has any questions about those, or drill me.
Any other questions, comments for Dottie?
Thank you.
Don't hear it, Dottie.
Okay, what did you say about the administrative assistant? Because it looks like it's 12%. What was the difference?
We increased the work hours from 35 hours per week to 37.5.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes.
Which is the, pretty much throughout the county.
There are, no, actually.
Many different types.
There are many different, yes. I will say that the majority of our employees work 40 hours. You know, if you take a look at the, most of the departments, but then most of the clerically focused departments are at 35 hours a week. We would just like to serve our customers who are our internal customers, who are our employees, be just a little bit more, a little bit longer. And so that's why I asked for 37 and a half.
Now, who has to approve the increased hours? Are we can do that, or is
Well, I did talk,
That's a
I
count-
talked to
that
the
is a council
commissioners.
function.
Yeah, I talked to the commissioners and they were okay with doing that.
If you approve the money in that line item, then you're approving her to spend that money, so. But that would be the increased hours.
increased hours? So we don't say, well, 37 and a half. Kind of lost my thought of mine. Dinner lunch is cutting in.
Is okay or not okay?
Okay, yeah, so that sounds good.
And she's already run it by the commissioners, is what she said. So as long as we approve the money, that part of it's a council function.
I would take it as if you guys do approve that money, then you are accepting that.
Okay.
It can go to the 37.5.
Yes,
Daddy,
ma'am.
what does that do to your work hour week? Like, you're adding an extra 2.5 hours. Is that just one day a week? Like
No,
an
that's
extra
a half an
2
hour every day.
Okay, just a half
So
hour every
it
day.
just gives us a little bit more time, you know, I mean, we already stagger lunch anyway, but this way, we're just available. I'm available all the time anyway, but at least we have, you know, the administrator, the assistant's position is formalized at that 37 and a half. You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Question, not related to your budget, but related to the health system or the healthcare.
Yeah.
There's this $50, the letter we got that said $50
The wellness program, yes.
program. That's a one-time $50 deduction, right? Not a $50, it was very ambiguous on the letter. Almost sounded like it was $50 off every month or every payment.
It is. It's off every pay. Yeah, $50 per pay.
If you
Now,
participate in that wellness.
if you participate in the wellness plan, and there are two parts to it, the commissioners and Apex, our broker, working together. What we're trying to accomplish with this is to assist our employees by finding out if they have any underlying or creeping health issues that they and their doctor could attack now and potentially avoid huge claims and for them, for themselves and for the county later on. And so if the employee and if the spouse is included in the plan, they both must do this. The two adults, the employee and the spouse, must complete two things. One is a physical exam by their medical professional, and there's lab work, and the lab work is outlined there. There's also something if you are a smoker or a previous smoker that there's a pulmonary evaluation, and we are basically saying that if the doctor waives that, the doctor says you really don't need it, then they don't need it. But those are the two things that must happen, the lab work and the physical exam. We, as a county, we do not need to know what anything, transpired. We don't need to know a diagnosis, nothing. All that we need back is the physician's form that states, yes, this employee did that, consulted with me, blah, 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 signed date. Comes back to me. And it is $50 per pay. Yes, per
So
pay.
some people would get money back if they're only getting.
No, they would not get anything back, but we don't know what the premiums will be for plan year 25-26, which is what this will be going toward. So it will definitely be a $50 reduction in their premium. And if the premium happens to be $40 as it is now per pay, then the employee would pay $0. But I cannot tell you what the commissioners will put the premium at for plan year 25-26.
Theoretically, though, this is only if we still stay with that company.
No, because we are self-insured, we drive the train. So the commissioners made that decision. So if we went with another company, it's our plan. So
Funding for that been put in the commissioner's budget then to fund all of
They
the
can
premiums?
give or take as much as they want. I mean, what dollar amounts in there?
Well, I mean,
But-
we wouldn't be getting any of the premium from the employees if they all decided to do the wellness thing.
Then
So
we'll
we
have to
would
make
owe
sure,
all of
then we'll
that.
have to make sure that the premium's funded enough. But this isn't such a bad idea because many people will not get their annual physical. And I assume that this physical is going to be on an annual basis, not a one-time and you're in for 20 years.
no, this is right now for plan year 25-26, and that physical has to happen between July 1 of 2024 and May 31st of 2025.
Would this take place of the wellness screening that we do every year?
Probably, yes, mainly because we as a county pay for that screening. We pay Parkview to come in and do that. Now, in years past, mainly because our health department didn't have the personnel able to do this. So our broker at the time said, hey, if you will do this, because they understood that if employees find, an underlying health issue early on, they can avoid a lot of issues later on. And so they actually paid for it. However, in the last 5 years, probably, the county has paid for it. In addition to the employee, if they wanted to upgrade, then they had to pay a specific amount for that upgrade. So this year, mainly because of all that health care money that we received from the state, the health department said, you know what, we would be happy to provide the the lab work free to our employees, and it should be free to employees anyway because it's all preventative. But they were willing to go ahead and do that. Now, it has to be on a appointment basis, but it won't be a one big thing where we have one day and employees sign up for a time and they come in and Parkview does their blood draw, and then their information goes on, on my chart. That's the one downfall if we have the health department as an individual. And you have to remember, this is voluntary. So, but the health department gives you a detailed report that you can take to your doctor. It just doesn't go into your my chart unless the doctor were to put it in there.
The fact that their premium could go from $45 a pay period to zero is a damn good benefit. And if they go for their physical, and many conditions can be caught by the lab work. As far as the smoking thing, the standard now, and this will be an increase, and it probably has already taken effect in some respects. The standard now for a former smoker is to get a low-dose CT scan once a year, looking for changes in the lungs. And I've done this for 4 or 5 years now, and it is less costly than a full-blown CT scan, but you'll start seeing that one show up quite a bit.
So you have to do that physical and stuff early on to get that reduced? When will that go into effect?
For plan year 25-26 will be,
Okay.
which will be July the 1st of next year. Yes, of 2025.
And that,
so you can do it now.
$600.
Yes, yeah, from
do it
July
now.
1st of this year until May 31st of next year, 2025. Those two things must be accomplished, and the paperwork must come back to HR, and then that way your premium reduction will take effect July 1 of 2025.
And that's $600 or whatever it's going to be per year, per employee, is far less expensive than a heart attack, cancer treatment, whatever, that might be caught with this. So, and that's what they're trying to prevent is those expenses.
Well, remember, it's $50 per pay.
So $100.
It's $1,300.
Yeah.
$1,300 a year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Anyway, that's what we have going on with the wellness forms. So they did not have to come in, they don't have to come into us until it's completed. And as long as it gets to us by May 31st of 2025.
but then they would have to get that physical every year.
Yes, it would be an every year if the commissioners decide to continue with this wellness program. And, that's a nice first step considering that they have not pulled the trigger on a clinic. As many of you know, the school systems all have clinics that their staff and in some cases, individuals who are on their health plan can avail themselves of going to a clinic, and it's free. Even the prescriptions, they have a limited list of the types of pharmaceuticals that they can offer. And we've done a lot of legwork with several of the places in this area that have clinics. We've even looked at having a clinic, a company come in and do a clinic. That what they would like is to have at least one employer, and then they'd like to add more employers. I will say Mike Watson did a boatload of research and work with DeKalb Central for their clinic, and we could partner with them. We have all the numbers, or at least we had all the numbers for the previous year, and the commissioners just haven't pulled the trigger yet on that. So this, I think, would be maybe the second best thing, but having a clinic would be wonderful because you have people who don't have to take a whole day off to go to the doctor. They can just run out to the clinic, have whatever, take a look at, it's certain things, those quick and easy things, free. to employees and the meds, and they're back at work. So they're being productive. So.
Anybody else for Dottie? Dottie, thank you for coming in.
You're welcome.
Great presentation, thank you. Sheriff Thomas.
Good afternoon. Brady Thomas with the Sheriff's Office. Overall, we kept the general operating accounts under the 4% as we were requested to do. The staff pay was increased 4% as well. One of the changes that we had was on-call pay for the detectives and our transport officers that we have was $100 per week in the salary ordinance. We changed that to $25 per day. One of the problems we were having with that was a detective may not be on call for the whole week, so then it was questionable whether or not they'd take that on-call pay. So by changing it per day, made it to where they can divide that up a little bit more if they want to. It did increase at the same time, and we made it in line with the other county employees that are also on call. I think it's probation officers that are $25 per day for being on call. I think I mentioned already part-time hourly rate, our merit deputy matrix that we have, and all the other staff also increased by 4%. Miscellaneous increases that I wanted to talk about or bring to your attention in account 10800. It's the other account. This account pays for our merit board meetings and that on-call pay that I was talking about. So we increased that by $5,650. The reason one of the reasons why we did that was another new thing was to pay deputies that do special details within the office an additional, if you want to call it a stipend, of $500 a year that do particular details for us that need to be done. A couple of examples of that are we have an evidence room custodian, a training director, and we have instructors, deputies that have gone to instructor school. That's very intense to become a law enforcement instructor, and they can instruct in defensive tactics, taser, emergency vehicle operators course. So they're very valuable to us, and these positions take on a lot of additional duties within the office that up to this point has always been voluntary. Some of the other deputies don't have any of these, so they have always stepped up and taken on these responsibilities for us. So it's pretty time consuming for them during their regular duties that they've assumed. So increase that account to do that. And the plan for that is to do it per pay period. That $500 would just be per pay period over the year. That way, if that changes hands to someone else, that could be changed over to that person. Account 22280, inmate clothing. We increased that $2,400. Need to replace a lot of the inmate jumpsuits and inmate shoes next year. Account 22300, officer operational supplies, increased $72,450. That is for our bullet-resistant vests. Those expire every 5 years by the manufacturer. Those have always been replaced on that time frame every 5 years. This was also included in the 5-year projection that you would have seen. So a total of 50 vests is what we need to order next year, and those are approximately $1,400 each. Account 22490, institutional medical, increased that by $3,500 in order to purchase blankets, sheets, and towels for the jail for the next year. Medical fees, which is account 32800, increased 5%, and that's in accordance with our healthcare provider, Quality Correctional, QCC, Quality Correctional Control. Can't remember what it stands for exactly. Quality Correctional Care. Our medical care provider at the jail. So they had an increase, so we built that into the budget. Account 3. What QCC does, our medical care provider, is, well, I would call it a team of people that provides one full-time nurse at the jail. And and then a part-time nurse. I think there might be 2 part-time people that come in and dispense medications to the inmates on the off hours and on the weekends. But we also have availability to a physician through them. So it's just our whole medical care system within the jail, and that's all contracted out.
Brady, is that the group out of Muncie?
It may be Muncie. I'm not sure where they're
The same
based.
one we've had for what, 10, 12 years?
Yeah, we haven't changed that in quite a while. I think they're the most popular provider in Indiana right now. We get a lot of
Spring jails is something that most of them don't want to do, so
Yeah.
you gotta find somebody.
Yeah, we get solicitations for other providers, but we haven't had any problems with QCC, and it allows us to mitigate liability having that, medical care contractor. And like I said, access to the physician. So anyway, they had a 5% increase. On the other account, 33220 postage, we increased that $500 simply because of the cost and predicted cost of postage. Account 33920 is our crime control account. We increased that by $26,000 for a camera system. And some of the decreases we had was in our part-time account, 10750, decreased that by $3,000 and moved that into the other category to make up for that extra pay that I had talked about. Another decrease that we had to compensate for it, 34190 care of inmates. That account is what we would use to house inmates in other counties. There's always been pretty substantial amount of money in that account. We fortunately have not had to we've used that very, very little. But we never know when we're going to need it. The jail numbers range anywhere from 85 to maybe 105 inmates, but sometimes it just jumps up, and if we end up with needing to house 10 inmates somewhere else, I think that was roughly $15,000 a month that we could go through pretty quickly. So there is some money there, but over the last year or two, we've started to back it down just a little bit because haven't been needing to do that. When it comes to the Hume Cap Fund, building repair and maintenance, there's $541,386 that was budgeted into that. On addendum 1 that I believe you have has the reasons for that. Do you have that addendum? Okay. So you can see on there door lock replacements, leaking toilets within the jail, shower replacements, the backup heat pump that's needed, the generator at the jail that's the original generator from 40 years ago, and upgrading some of the air handlers. And I do understand that that's $500,000 and that may not be feasible to do all those things, but these are critical components of the jail that if money is allotted for that, would certainly look at the most high priority items that need replaced and use it in that way.
Is that chiller repair replacement the same one that the commissioners are paying for from ARPA?
I don't know where they're paying for it from.
That's the one that you've been talking to them about?
Yes, that is. It's the same chiller. So that price there, the $225,000 was the original estimate for the entire replacement, which.
So that is why council, you won't see it in the actual Hume Cap Fund 1138 budget under sheriff, because that is being paid for by the commissioners with ARPA dollars.
Okay. So that chiller parts, $250,000 can be taken out of that on the addendum there. The other account, 44520, which is police equipment, we put $5,644, and that's for the equipment for 2 transport vans that we'll be planning on buying for next year. Account 44610, purchase of vehicles, $444,565. That's for 5 new vehicles for next year. And to fully outfit those vehicles, the way we had done it in the past was we'd purchase it from a dealership, pay that cost, and then pay for the equipment separately. The way we're going to do it next year is that'll all be in together. So when we receive that, we're estimating for those 5 vehicles at $68,113 total, and that includes completely outfitted vehicle ready to go on the road. However, the 2 transport vans, the other 2 vehicles, transport vans that we need, at $52,000 each, that's only for the vehicle. And that's why in the police equipment, we have the additional money those don't cost nearly as much to outfit them as the road patrol vehicles do. So those are roughly $2,800 to get the necessary equipment and cage and that type of equipment installed in those. So we did ask for a couple more vehicles. One of the problems that we've had this year was being understaffed for quite a while. Last year, at the beginning of the year, we were just on the road alone, we were understaffed 8 deputies. So as we were hiring deputies, we didn't have, just over time, the vehicles had been turned in or maybe crashed and then not replaced at the time because they were not needed. But so that's a struggle we've had, is getting back on our feet with having the right number of vehicles that we need. We also need 2 to 3 pool cars so that when vehicles go down for any reason. So trying to get back into a good position. We've been fully staffed for about a year now and struggled. So that's why we're asking for those 2 additional vehicles for that. What questions does the council have?
The transport vans, are they replacing current vans or are they in addition to?
That would be replacing those.
Thank you.
How many cars a year do we replace? This is high, isn't it? We don't replace 5 every year, do we?
Yeah.
We normally do
Five's been the typical. We moved from 3 to 5 a couple of years ago.
And you haven't replaced the transfer vans for a while, have you?
It's been a while. Do you know the year on those? 2019s. I think they have roughly 100,000 miles on them. I would like to get them staggered eventually. We just have 2 vans. I'd like to get them eventually on a schedule where they're staggered, not replace them both at the same time. But they're, as of now, both needed.
Another question I got is, since you don't have to transfer as many prisoners to another county, is your mileage on your vans going down?
We still transfer quite a bit. I'm not aware of the mileage going down drastically. Some courts will do virtual hearings, but a lot of courts are now going back away from that. We did quite a few here in DeKalb County, which was nice for safety and security reasons. The inmate didn't have to leave the facility, and trip hazards and escape hazards and everything that falls into that. But it's been come from the courts that they want to be seen in person in the courtroom. So we transfer them over here, and other counties like to do that too. So still keep our transport officers pretty busy.
When you transport somebody in a van, where are you normally going? One of the prisons, Fort Wayne, where?
You name it. Yeah, it's all over. I mean, it could be other states to take them back to the jail that they're in and bring them over for a hearing for a day. And then,
Okay, so people that are in another jail, but we're responsible for bringing them back here to,
yeah.
for court?
So anything and everything that an inmate needs to go anywhere for. It could be a dental appointment over in Butler for half a day with a couple of inmates, or it could be taking them to prison to serve their time, or very, very commonly transporting inmates. Well, it could be picking up inmates from Allen County or surrounding counties or southern Indiana on a warrant that they were picked up in that area, and just transporting them back to this county to have them on the warrant. But it's very common to bring someone from an hour and a half away for a hearing for a day, and then the next day take them back to that jail. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, you have some of that, and we're very fortunate. We started about 8 people short in the jail also, so about 16 people at the start of last year, and been fully staffed for about a year now, and have a wait list for the jail, and have a wait list for the road that's good for a few more months that we can pull from our last process. So have a wait list for both the jail and the road, and so feel very good about it. You know, very fortunate to be in a good position and able to send deputies to more training, and when they want to take days off, they can do it without someone else having to work. But so obviously a lot of benefits to that. But so yeah, we're very fortunate.
one of the things that we've heard is just concerns from the judges about mental health. You mentioned trainings. Are your deputies getting mental health training as well? And what does that look? Can you speak to that? I'm just curious.
Oh, sure. So probably the most beneficial training a deputy can get is crisis intervention team training, CIT training. We started, a perfect example of being able to send people to training. We started the year with the deputies, maybe 4 of them having this CIT training, which is pretty involved. It's a week-long mental health training and how to deal with individuals that are in crisis. And the goal is to not take them to the jail, but get them the proper resources that they're going to benefit from. As of now, we only have 3. So we've worked over the last year and a half on every training that came out that was CIT training we sent them to. And as of right now, we only have 3 deputies that have not been to that training, and they're actually scheduled for September to go to that training. So by the end of this year, every deputy will have that week-long CIT training. So we're proud to be able to say that the entire office, sheriff's office, every deputy will be CIT trained. Yeah, hopefully it helps out. Every officer has, I went to that years ago too, and you learn a lot. And again, the goal is to get people what they need. It doesn't benefit anybody for to have them to sit in the jail, not getting what they need. Then they get out and they didn't get what they need again, so they're back again. And so much better to guide them and steer them into the resources in the community that are going to benefit them. So hopefully we'll, continue to recognize that and do that.
Brady, the Crisis Intervention Center that Northeast Center opened up out here behind the hospital, has that been of use? Have we been using it? How's that working its way into the system?
Yeah, we have started using it a little bit. I've gotten some good feedback on, deputies being able to take people there. And again, you're putting them somewhere that to get them out of the situation they're in, and someone that can help them stabilize that situation. So it's the CARES unit at the Northeastern Center that you're referring to, and it's a 24-hour facility that people in crisis can just walk into and get the resources they need. And I think the idea behind that was the Northeastern Center, there's a lot of steps to go through to get someone into the Northeastern Center, whether that's a involuntary or voluntary commitment. There's some steps involved with that. And with the CARES unit, their policies, they don't refuse anybody. And so if you're having a crisis or just it's up to 24 hours, I believe, that you can stay there and anyone can walk in. So also police officers and law enforcement can take people there. And that could be anything from a domestic situation where someone's not getting along and they need somewhere to stay for 24 hours, and they can walk in and they have a very nice facility that they can stay at. So we have utilized that from time to time, and I think that's continuing.
I know it's not going to be used in all cases, but is this showing up as an alternative to taking them to jail and being in jail?
Oh, I think it could, because oftentimes when a police officer's on scene, they have to resolve. It's about coming up with solutions to the problems. And unfortunately, sometimes when someone's causing a problem and they don't have anywhere to go, we only had one option to take them. Where to take them if they were trespassing on someone else's property, or the officer may not want to take them to jail, but in order to resolve the situation, that was going to resolve it, and we would know everyone was going to be safe. So this does allow an opportunity to take them somewhere where they're going to be safe and without putting them into the system unnecessarily.
Any other questions for the sheriff? Anything else on any of your budgets you want to touch on, or?
No, I don't have anything else for the council.
Well, thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate all the information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brady. Thanks, Tika. Break time.
What's up?
It is.
Break time.
It's break time. Let's take 15 minutes. Come back at 20 till.
I've come here. Do I know what it would cost? No. I've consulted twice with outside entities and once with the sheriff here. They made some recommendations, but none of them were willing to help me out. And obviously, I know what I don't know, and security for that building is just something that I couldn't tell you exactly what it was going to cost, what would be needed, and what would be best suited for the county. If you were to start off looking at our front gate and saying most of those things should probably be bulletproof glass, that's the beginning. Then cameras. I would really like cameras in the annex. I don't even think that's just for my department. You do have to remember that we have the public defender's office upstairs. There can be every once in a while a ruckus up there. And then obviously my lower division does have some cameras, which I keep on 24 hours a day. And my juvenile, what used to be my juvenile lobby, which is kind of now both a juvenile lobby and an intake lobby, do have a camera, but they're not completely integrated. Not all of them have sound. Not all of them have the ability to be placed on at the same time. So if we had a fully integrated security system, that would be greatly appreciated. The next is the electronic filing of our historic caseload. One of the largest things I've talked about is space as a commodity for the annex or for the county in total. We have a very large historical filing system. It takes up what is probably 2 office spaces by itself. It's inefficient and large. So if I had the ability, I did speak with some record keepers down at the state, and they have some programs that will help you do that. But when it comes to moving those, what it would cost to have somebody come in and scan all of them, what it costs for the servers, all the rest of that, I have no idea. I would need help from that. I would need an IT specialist to come in and help with us getting that done and have a long-term plan. Because I don't think that if you took a look at the sheer mass of files that's there, and all of them are necessary in electronic form, records on felonies going back to before I was born, they're necessary to have. They're just inefficient in the way that they're kept.
Well, are we creating more paper files, or so it's not that we stopped at a certain point, paper before this date, electronic after that date, it's still adding to the paper files?
Correct. We do have a more aggressive, we've adopted a more aggressive clean out for the paper files in which we have, because we, in the middle of my tenure here, we've moved from one program to another, which has a much more viable scanning database, SRS. I think you guys know that community corrections moved to SRS and then went paperless. My problem with that is our expectations for a fact finding and being in court are much higher than regular. If the system goes down, everybody's done. And for me, maybe I'm a little bit old school, but I still feel the necessity of the basic requirements to have a paper file. But we are much more aggressive. We are trying to clear out that room with all of our new files and just guarantee that the only things that we have are things that are a necessity long term. But yes, that's correct. We are continuing to create them. And then finally, this last one is a bit of a broad stroke, and it's just asking the county council and maybe the county as a whole to continue to support the treatment court model, the things that we've been doing since my arrival here, the growth in our court system, the growth in my department as a whole. I think there were probably just 10 employees when I arrived. I wish I could give you that. I'm not really sure everybody I'm completely in charge of now with to take over a community corrections in a separate division. But it's taken a lot of support. Not entirely financial, because we've done as much as we can to go outside of the county to get funding from the state to grow. But it does take your understanding. It does take the council and the commissioners to take a look at that and give us the room and the ability to go after that. I can give you a better explanation as we move down through here, through my budget. You'll see exactly what I mean by requesting that support. If we want to take a look at our my very first section of line items, which would be in the general. Are you posting them up or not? Thanks for that. One of the main issues, what I mean by that support is many of the things that you will see, not only in the general, but throughout our budget, though they're here and I have to request them, a huge portion of them are going to be paid through state grant. Okay. If you can run through the basic line item for 1001, our account for my assistant chief, his salary, 60% of that salary will be paid by grant funds alone. Another 20% will be paid for by funds that we bring in, which means the county itself is only responsible for 20% of that salary. The next would be our ATC treatment court provider. The entirety of that salary, though I'm requesting it in general, will be paid for by a grant. The next, our moderate to high mental health specific officer. The minimum every year is $38,000 paid for by a state grant, but we continuously ask for more and more is paid. Although I make the request for the entirety of the salary because her position is necessary. Again, we've never lost that grant, never had issues getting that grant, but I still make that request. Moving down, our vet treatment court officer, fully funded in grant. Our treatment court, family restoration court officer, fully paid for in grant funding. Our a new addition starting this January, but will be continuing next year. I've already filed the grant request and hope to be approved prior to September. Will be our probation officer assistant, Lisa Kohler. That's a new grant that we completed at the end of 2023, but just started paying in January. The entirety of that salary will be paid out of a grant. Okay. We will also be asking, we moved some money around at the very end of that grant and have requested more money in the next grant to guarantee that we pay less even for the benefits. The hope is that we can get as close as we can to paying every part of her employment. At the bottom of 1001, what you will see is our juvenile secure detention. That was a line item that was kind of imposed upon me so that the county had the ability to keep track of exactly what we spend on juvenile placement costs. That's an impossible number for me to project. It really has to do with the issues that we see, the seriousness of the issues that we see. I never have any idea exactly what we're going to spend. Now, in the last year, I've asked for that amount to be raised by $10,000. Now, the reason I have asked for that is the intention to implement a new program or the extension of a lightly used program. And that is in partnership with Community Corrections, which is an intent to create an after-hours immediate detention on-call placement for juveniles on a home detention bracelet and or just juvenile home detention. One, it creates immediate responsivity, which right now, due to placement issues throughout the state, there's just limited amount of detention beds and the high rate of people who are being put in there or the high offense type doesn't leave us bed availability. There's a lot of times people say, we think that this is what needs to happen, and I can spend 5 hours on the phone and I'm not going to get a call. Now that's expensive. That's a couple $100 a day, let alone a sheriff going down to Johnson County 2 to 3 times at 5 hours a clip. If we have the ability within our risk assessment, our intention is to look at and see the possibility of placing these juveniles in a bracelet on lockdown in their home. That means they are at home, their home is their jail, they don't get to go anywhere. That is going to be well, I always want to say 7 because that was the base, that was the minimum, but $12 a day. Now, we will continuously ask that the parental participation be involved. If the parent has the ability to pay that bill, we're going to ask them to pay that bill. If they don't, I have to have the ability to be able to pay that. And for us, it's a win-win. I'm going to spend $12 a day instead of the county paying $200. And a sheriff 5 hours on the road one way. And he'll have to go there and back maybe a couple times.
We normally take the juveniles where?
Well, normally we would go to Allen County Juvenile Center, which is not very far away. But everyone has had that issue in the northeast portion. A couple juvenile detention facilities have closed. The last few we've had we've had to go to Johnson County. That has been the opening. And that's a difficult thing to do for the sheriff. Not something we like to do. It's a long way away. Difficult for me to actually know exactly what the offense placement looks like in their county. You know, who are we placing versus who will they be bunked with? And that's a difficult thing. We really want to, when we're talking about the juveniles of DeKalb County, I like to be as careful as I can about the decisions that we're making, who we're placing them next to, and make sure that we're making the right decisions long-term for them, not just having the safety concern be the only thing we're worried about.
And it could be that putting them on a bracelet in their own home might not be any better than who they might be with in the juvenile center. Am I correct?
Quite possibly. Quite possibly. One of the other things that we developed when I arrived is a thing called the DRE, which is Detention Risk Alternative and risk assessment. What we do is we have law enforcement as well as my officer who may be on call actually go through a standardized risk assessment to determine so that we aren't making just a judgment call on the phone, who should and who should not actually be involved in the system, who should get locked up, who should be removed, who should calls the DCS, all of that. You know, so there's a much more formulated process to that other than just a judgment call from an officer or a probation officer on the phone making a determination of what we should be doing. And we're hoping that those that fall in the middle where we really look at it and say that this is a possible detention placement, but we don't have any beds, we will have an alternative. And that's the reason I've asked for that extra money is because I want to guarantee that if I ask DeKalb County Community Corrections to create a program, to have those bracelets available, to have somebody else there. We've limited the amount of the first year participant at a max of 7 at one time. But that means 7 extra bracelets, 7 extra on the shelf, somebody else who has to program those people into the system, who has to worry about their schedules, who has to return the phone calls, has to have them report in for drug tests, things of that nature. If I'm going to do that, I have to support it and not know that all I'm giving them is work and no pay for it. So that's why I've requested that increase in the actual line item for care of inmate. As we move forward, account 2000, that's the probation supplemental fund. What we have done over the last 2 years is moved almost all, I would say, financial increases for probation officers that is above the salary schedule to the supplemental fund. If you don't remember or weren't here 2 years ago, because we didn't meet last year, I regained control of the supplemental fund. Previously, it had been used to pay full and total salaries, which is against the statute. We said we shouldn't be doing that, but if you give me back full and total control of that, what I'm going to do is remove the external extra pay that we pay officers, and I'm going to take care of it through the supplemental fund. Myself and the judges are supposed to be in control of that, are supposed to use it to pay those officers, and that's what we intended to do. So you will see that now. You will see that those extra payments above the salary schedule for officers who are certified in alcohol and drug assessments and officers who have speciality either in mental health or with one of our treatment courts are paid a $1,000 stipend for the A&D or a $1,000 stipend for their extra requirements to be certified for our addiction treatment court. In addition, one of the main large sums that you will see in there, and I say that because this is our expenditure, and my hope is that we will find a way to get ourselves out from under this large expenditure, is $60,000 in testing service. With the addition of our 3 treatment courts, testing service is an extensive expense for us. Some of our participants being seen 2 to 3 times a week, tested at 2 to 3 times a week. We have to pay that bill, and yes, we attempt to recoup it, but we have to have that line item out there first. Our hope is that we can create a line item separate through opioid fund. We haven't been able to get those things moving at this time, but my hope is that at some point in time, that $60,000 will fall off the supplemental budget, and we'll be able to put more and more independently gained probation user fees towards the projects that we have, either through myself
at the standard probation department, one of our treatment court, things, or directly with the officers at the community corrections department. At this time, we are getting pretty close to spending almost the same amount that we actually take in. That $60,000 puts us really close to that range, but it's a necessity.
Are you getting any of the opioid monies now for the drug testing?
Not yet, no.
Not from DeKalb or any of the other
Anywhere else,
facilities?
no. They
Okay.
have been voted on, but I believe the current process is the necessity for a board to actually approve those funds and their movement. At least that's what I've been told. It's a complicated process. We're involved, pushing it forward. Local JRAC is
And I
involved as
don't
well.
think there's $60,000 there, but drug-free DeKalb give you any money for
They
drug
give
testing?
it every year. We, both myself, Standard Probation has a grant through drug-free, and Ryan has the amounts. I probably have them here because he provided to me already. He has two through drug-free. 2021, $25 per PSE, so a total of $75,000 in 21 and 22. Sorry, 7,500. 2023, 4,400. 2024, 3,500. They have reduced a little bit of what they're paying. There's more and more people getting involved in that, so they kind of reduce how much they're willing to give each participant, but we do as much as we can with them as well. Standard Probation has a drug-free grant that actually pays for an incentive program for people who are in full and total compliance. We give a $25 gas card to 2 participants per month to help with transportation, to get back and forth to both to us and to their treatment. But they have to be in full and total compliance and a medium and or high-risk offender, which means they're paid up to date, they're testing clean, they're showing up to all their appointments, they're showing up to all their treatment. They're the only people who have the ability to get into that drawing and be drawn for that. So, yeah, so we utilize it as much as we can. But I think those dollars will dwindle with the more people that get involved with it. But it's the more it grows, the better for DeKalb County anyway.
The new health department money is coming in, able to use for those testing. Right.
Not for this that I'm aware of.
No, community corrections is utilizing some portions of that, or the intent to, through a change academy and case for vape education, stream programs. We were involved in with the outset to take a look at it, but it doesn't really fit any of the standard probation stuff. If I had a chance of the money, I'd go after it, I promise. Supplemental juvenile, there's 0 changes to that over the last couple of years that I've had. Those finances have not changed. Next budget line item is 9124. That's a state grant. That's actually the financial breakdown of the state grant for our mental health and high rate supervision officer, Officer Scott. As I said, there's a guarantee that we'll get $38,000, and then many of the other funds, both for her benefits, office supplies, drug testing supplies, which helps us with that, testing services, her travel and training is all paid for. So many of those, that's just basically a list that gives you that's what our intent is to get back from the grant, so we have the ability to spend it. The budget line item for 9157, again, is an ATC. It's another grant line item, which just basically shows you these are the amounts that will be requested and hopefully approved through the granting process by Officer Hall. So it should pay for a large portion of Officer Hall's salary, the totality of Officer Kreider's, and the totality of Officer Burnett's, as long as some drug testing supplies and other operating supplies for graduation incentives and things of that nature. For some reason, maybe I have them out of order, but the vet and FRC are both the exact same. You're going to see a totality of a request, but all of that intends to be paid for through the grant. And then finally, 9158 is the SIM, or Justice Partners Addiction Grant. That's a new one I talked about that pays for Probation Officer Assistant Lisa Culler. Again, all of that intends to be paid by a new grant that I filed in May. One of the other things that I had Officer Hull work up for me, both for on personnel evaluation, the treatment court evaluation, and for this, is to give the council a rundown of that treatment court division, to give you a real picture of what they've done, what they've brought in, of what we've been able to do with the limited amount of support from the county, which is what I asked for in those capital needs. For the FRC grant and IOCS, the total that they've already been able to bring in grant funds is $553,258.52. Should they be fully granted again this year, they will have brought in 2025, $768,377.52. For the vet court, at this time, they brought in $553,028.86, and by the end of 2025, $761,811.86. Difficult to explain, but with all we have 3 standard officers, the assistant chief, and 2 probation officer assistants down there. Only 1 person in that entire division is paid for by the county in total. Everybody else either has part, most, or all of their salary paid for by a grant fund. Yes, we built almost an entire division off of that. If you look at that, the total grant fund, also he's listed some of the other grants that they've had. In total, the 3P problem-solving course from 2019 to 2024, $1.3 million. With the total requested amounts for 2025, $2.1 million. Okay. And there's nothing else I can do but attribute that work to Officer Hull. He does 99% of that. But it's necessary to take a look at that, which I presented to you in your budget, and then look at it and say that is where the meat and potatoes of our growth has come from, is through that granting. Any questions for me on the probation specific budget? I think I covered most of it.
Your pay is department
head. Yeah, it's set by the state, as well as there are portions of which the judges have directed me to file. Any additionals above that, which is requested by the state, have been, the judiciary has directed me to pay out a supplemental. That way it has no effect on the county.
And the state sets the salary for all of the probation officers, not just the department.
Right.
Michael, have you discussed your security concerns with the commissioners? Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yes, you have.
Simple
I have.
answer.
We had a, long-term planning is difficult. We've had a couple things that we've had long-term plans on, and somewhere the why and the road comes, and not everybody's informed of the why and the road. Some of those things should be larger meetings, in my opinion. I told you, I'm not an expert on that. But we had some decisions made. The decisions made were for card readers. Card readers for doors I already have locks on. The only thing it did was make me less secure. So in my opinion, probably not the best allocation of funds or decision. Am I asking for an officer at the door? I'm not. But I think there probably should have been a lot more people involved in that decision on what was really best. Because those doors could have stayed locked. We could have moved and said, I understand that the cameras are probably unbelievably expensive. Tell me how much they are, whose real plans they have, where else you can help. You tell me I got to help find the money. Can other people pool? I know the public defender's office has different ways to get money, so do I. But we weren't even involved in that decision. But by the time I found out that that was happening, it was already being put on the door. But yeah, there's been more than one of those decisions where it's kind of happened to us, you know. So But my door's always open. Be more than happy to sit down and help or find a way to solve those problems if I can.
I know your door is open, but we want to keep it closed and secure, so.
Right. Yeah. Now, it's hard to discuss the security concerns without maybe giving. They haven't been maybe. They don't always get communicated all the way up the line, but I changed a lot of those policies and directives of what happened inside that building myself. It used to be on a timer, much like it currently is, and I stopped that because people were able to walk in the door without anybody knowing they had been there. Now that means they can go, they can hide in the bathroom, and we'll have no idea. Okay, it's the same for the end of the day. My door shuts at 4:30. If that timer lock doesn't go at 4:30, and I'm not the guy who locks it after I've walked through the building, I don't know who's there. Neither does your cleaning people. Neither do the people who stay late in that office, but that's what we went to. Previously, that's the way it was, and I stopped that. I decided when the door was going to get unlocked. I got there early. I opened it at 7:30 because I found a gentleman naked in our bathroom twice and had to face him with law enforcement. Okay. There was also a gentleman who happened to be homeless in the area. Not particularly a dangerous gentleman, but like to stay after hours in our basement bathroom and try to find a different place to sleep. I'm now right back to being concerned that those are issues for us. That's the problem.
Sounds like your building security needs are due for review.
I would request that, yeah.
Actually, I think probably what needs to happen is a comprehensive review of all of our buildings and all of our space needs. Security has been an issue here at the courthouse, too little, too much, whatnot. We've got departments that, and not saying that all departments don't need some security, but you've got departments over in the annex that really need security. You've got departments in this building that really don't need security, that some shifting around like we did with the surveyor's office and the 4D office might be more appropriate. And not cost us additional money because we've already got a fairly good security system right here. But that's not our decision. That's if we could do a comprehensive plan and then bring something to us for the funding of it would probably be the best thing. That's not our issue.
We'll need definitely to get the commissioners involved.
Yeah, absolutely, because
I
it
think
is
that's
their
a good
issue.
place to start, and I think we need to get started.
Sure. And that's, it was frustrating, how much getting the email back, how much does it cost? I've been talking about that for 5 years because it was something that I saw when I came in. Now, are the people that I talk to in this county maintenance? Larry's unbelievably responsive. When I looked at him and say, I need to change this, I'm going to do this. He's over there the same day. When our back door sticks, because we have one singular entrance and exit for the probation department, he's over there same day. That's not what I mean. When I talk to IT and I talk to him about the fact that this is the timing of when that door unlocks and doesn't unlock, Jack's talking to me on his cell phone at 7 o'clock at night. So the people I work with, directly on those issues, I've never had a problem with. But that long-term plan thing and really coming together with people and saying, this is or is not the right plan with the people who are truly involved in it. Sometimes I just, I hate to say that I haven't seen it.
Well, and I'm sorry if you were upset that I sent you that email. Council did request for me to ask for that information.
Yeah, no, and it wasn't my intention to be snippy. It was just, I look at it and say,
I was kind of offended, I'll be honest with you.
It was looking at it and saying, to come back with an amount that they've asked for when I've done it for 5 years, nobody's talked to me about any of them, and then say, if they're capital needs, I need to know how much they cost. Well, I've been asking them for 5 years. Nobody's asked me, what can we do to help? We're actually going to move on any of these things. We're just going to keep talking about them for 5 years and say, what's the cost? My response is, if I could take care of them, I would. If I knew how to pay for them, I would. I would just do it myself. But I can't. That's why they've been the capital needs. If I knew exactly how much they cost, I don't have line item budgets to bring in people, the contractors or anybody else to give me estimates. That's not part of what I have. So I just didn't see the purpose in asking me how much they cost. But not my intention to offend you.
To cut through the red tape, we're asking, and we're going to see if the right parties get involved with this here.
Understood.
So count on it.
Which in that will fall into the whole setting up something, talking to the commissioner, setting up something with a protocol so that people know where to go, since we now have the 3 maintenance people, and so there's a central person that they can go to that can either bring it to the commissioners or whatnot.
Sounds like it's overdue, though.
Oh, yeah,
We need to make it happen.
for sure.
We'll get on it.
Thank you. Anything else? Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay.
You're laughing already? We beat up on him, we'll be good to you.
I've already been here twice, so I don't have that much to say.
Yeah, but we make you fall down, so
That's
please don't
true.
do that.
If you want to sit this spot.
Welcome, Michelle.
Hello.
Thank you.
So I've already been here twice, once about juvenile, which we have received the juvenile grant. That one's on the fiscal year, and that money is in. It's the exact same amount we received for at least 5 years. I didn't look back farther than that. No indication on the horizon that that's going to increase. So unless you all have connections at the state that we can use to get more money allocated to DOC, that's what we would really need to happen. Same thing for the adult. They've indicated to us there isn't going to be any more money. So what we got last year is probably what we're going to get again. Everything that I presented when I was here the last 2 times remains the same, other than the new white collar overtime rule discussion that needs to happen. We have 4 people that fall into that work different places at community corrections. 2 of them are in the adult, what I think of as the adult program, the adult funds. Susan let me know that they won't be needing as much of the maintenance position funding as we had originally thought. So if we can take that additional funding and move it over, that would cover probably 2 of the employees at the adult division. So that would not necessarily be a problem for them. It's Change Academy that I'm concerned about. One of them is a teacher, so she's considered a skilled profession, I believe is how Dottie likes to term it.
Learn professional.
Learned profession, yes. So that's the reason she is exempt. The other is the director of that program over there, who then the other employees report to as their supervisor. There is no funding for us in Change to cover for them. I'll give you guys the exact number that we would need to get them up to the threshold. It's an additional $16,461 that would be needed to get them to the threshold. I think there's some differing opinions on what this new white collar rule actually means. In one email reference from Dottie, she said at WIS, they're explaining that if you don't pay people up to that threshold, then they automatically become non-exempt. That was not my understanding from her original report, which comes from her labor attorneys, which I've now forgot the name of, something, something, and something.
Bertley.
There you go. Thank you very much. There's an or in their report. So they're saying you can either pay them up to the threshold or you can pay them overtime once they go over 40 hours for the week. That was also my understanding from an employment attorney at the Office of Court Services. So those 2 were in agreement, but now I guess WIS is not in agreement. I'm not a labor attorney. I'm not going to pretend to know the answer. So I'm not sure, discussion-wise, whether you're going to consult with someone else, have the county attorney look into it. I'm not sure really what the plan is there. But my understanding was there are multiple options. One being pay them up to the threshold. One being that you could leave them at the amount that you plan to pay them, but pay them the overtime once they go over 40, or give them comp time once they go over 40, or of course, look at reviewing classification and see in general where people should fall and if they should be exempt or not. So,
Would giving them comp time very disruptive?
I think for one position in particular, so we have the benefit of having a time clock at community corrections. And so we were able to go back historically, kind of look at the hours that people have worked and make an average out of it and kind of see where they fall. And is it, all year long? Is it only certain parts of the year that some of them work over, things like that? One position in particular would be very difficult for us because he does work a lot of overtime. It would be the director of residential. He also is kind of the stopgap for if we have attendance issues in residential. Obviously, we have to have a certain number of employees for safety reasons. And so if for some reason someone has called off, is coming in late, has to leave early, he would be the one that covers those hours until we could figure out what to do otherwise. So he does work significantly over the 70 hours for the pay period, almost always. The others are much closer to being at the threshold and needing very little overtime. And one of them, the other at the adult program, she has certain times of the year when she works more and other times when she stays closer to 70 hours. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I mean, for one position in particular, I think the comp time would be problematic.
Anything else for Michelle? Anything else you'd like to add?
So we will need to know sooner or later where you're moving these people, or if you're wanting her to pay the overtime on some of them or whatnot, so that we know where to put this money in the budget.
And we will.
January.
And we didn't talk to Dottie when she was here much about that white collar rule. We probably should have.
So, yeah, and so for July 1st, so it starts in July 1st. It already started, I suppose, I should say. We are okay on that increase. It's the January 1st increase that's going to cause us problems. And those are the numbers I'm talking about, is the January 1st increase, which is up to 58,680.
58,656.
January 1st is in your old budget, not the next budget.
Well, only for Change Academy.
Yes.
They would change, okay.
Yeah.
Right, which
But
is
that's
two of the
people,
four,
yeah.
two of the four that I'm talking about, right? And that's also where we're going to have the biggest issue with coming up with any kind of funding.
You won't get anything, you won't be able to submit for that. It's already done.
The increase is gonna 99% need to come from the general fund that you guys pay for some of her items. It's not a lot, but it'll need to come from that area. So when I was figuring it, trying to figure out, and I don't know if you're wanting Michelle to tell you which positions that she definitely wants to pay overtime on or not. To do all four positions, it would be $26,341 if my figures were right.
Slightly higher than what I had, but pretty close, yeah.
So that would be if you brought all four of those positions up.
Our award letter for the adult grant is expected on July 19th. I say expected because there's been years when the DOC has said, yeah, we're not ready yet, and then they push it out a week or two or more. But that's the expected date for those award letters, so we'll know for sure our grant funding on that date. That's what they've indicated, and I did request additional funding, but unofficially, the indication has been that it'll be the same amount that programs received last year, this year.
Last year was cut, though.
Yes. Correct. 50,000, correct?
Jill, I had a note also that that Community Corrections is now assuming IT bills where it wasn't sent to us before to the tune of, what, about $30,000?
Yes,
So
so.
we've had to add that in, correct?
Yes, correct. So and I was just told by the IT department, like, these are things you're responsible for now. So we had to fit those into the budget. So at this point, our server maintenance and software maintenance and whatever else these things are, also not an expert in that, at this point is about $30,000 a year that we're having to take out of either our grant or our project income. And that's about 13,000 to 14,000 more than we were paying previously. That's been added for the 2025 year of things that have been added.
Our page is like 3 and 4.
Okay.
It has budget 0.
Mm-hmm.
Budget 0. Like this is a whole new thing. That's what it is.
So, yeah, it's very confusing because with their budgets, we have to use object numbers. So the new object number would be 25, which then separates it from the object that was 24. So you don't see that part of it. The grant funding, they are required to change fund numbers every other year. So you can see on page 8, you will see the Fund 9121 state grant, you'll see what they're requesting. But then if you go further back, you'll see Fund 9127, that was where the 2024 budget was.
Numbers change in even years, right?
Number change every year. No, they change every year.
Well, in this one, it says it's got odd years in parentheses. What does that
So
mean?
here's the whole thing, is when that first came down, however many years ago, everything was still on a fiscal grant.
Right.
So when I had to separate it, then the fiscal grant was, say, we're getting ready for 24, 25 is what we would be planning for. So the fund number chosen, it was the end, the 25 part that determined whether it was an even or an odd, to deter, so that we knew which fund to go back and forth on. It totally looks opposite than what it is because they went from fiscal to calendar.
Moving target that you can't pinpoint
Will
anything.
it ever clear up in 2 or 3 more years after it's been calendar for a while? Always be this way.
I mean, I can take off the little note that says even and odd. That was just a note for me when I was trying to figure out how to know which year was going to go in which fund. So no, it will always be every other year. One year it's 9121, one year it's 9127. That's the same with the probation state grant as well.
Michelle, was there any other things that now you are responsible for, like the IT that is going to be changing this year too? Is there anything else that's been added to your plate that you weren't anticipating?
I would say, I guess, regular inflation increases and everything. So we've had, if I've talked about it when I've been here, I'm not sure if I have, we've had a lot going on with the fire system and the HVAC system. So getting those things apparently where they should have been when the building was built has cost us thousands of dollars in the last month. We've had to have 3 different contractors out, a couple of them multiple occasions in order to get that in place. But it is, I am told, finally, as of last week, completely functioning, and all pieces and parts have been installed and programmed and tested. So I think just those kinds of things, which I'm sure you've all noticed, life in general have gone up. So the service calls have been more, the parts have been more, just everything that we've been kind of trying to work through. So we have found that we've needed to kind of plan a little bit better for those, knowing that the costs are probably not going down. We need to be prepared for those kinds of things ahead of time.
That was the utility bills, the electric still a big issue. fairly high.
Yes. Yes, it is. That's another area where we were trying to be really careful what we budgeted so we don't run out of money towards the end of the year. Last year, we did have the ability to transfer some funds around towards the end of the year. And so we were able to spend all but just a little bit over $6,000 of the grant funding by moving it to such things as the utilities to make sure that we had all of that covered. And what we've been told by DOC is obviously if you don't spend your money, then it looks like you don't need it. So we were sure to spend as much as we possibly could, which got us down to $6,000, which is about as much as we possibly could, 99% of what we needed to spend. So yeah, those are all things that we're looking at. And then in my 5-year capital, I just marked there's going to be some things coming up in the next 2 to 3 years. We really need new field radios for our field officers so they can stay connected to the dispatch center in case they need assistance quickly, or if they're out and they, for example, if they're out and they come across some kind of new offense, they don't have the ability to respond to those. Legally, they don't have the ability to respond to those kinds of situations. So they need to call out for assistance. And of course, those are tense situations because you have an offender in front of you who knows that they've now been caught committing a new offense, and you're waiting for an officer that can arrest them to, right? Yeah. And we want them to be safe as they possibly can. And so we need to make sure they have good functioning equipment. The radios we have right now, we've replaced the batteries, which cost us a couple $100. But we really need to make sure that they have newer ones, updated ones that can function with the system like they're supposed to. So that's my first request. And then after that, after that, what we're probably looking at is needing a new vehicle for those officers to get out and about and do those contacts also as safely as they can, traffic-wise. The cars we have now, we've been putting a lot of money into repairs on them, steering issues. And
Without looking at the amount that's available in public safety, we might look at that to get the radios that community corrections would need as a public safety expense. The other thing is, and I reluctantly bring this up, but we transferred money from the ARPA funds that were previously set aside to put a solar field in at the community corrections to help them handle their power needs out there and the expense, which we transferred it off to something else. I don't remember where we transferred it to.
It had to do with the huge chiller thing that needs to be done
Chiller
at
in
the
the
jail.
jail. Okay.
And there was a large highway project.
Okay. Right, but I've been interested in the fact that over in Kendallville at the McRae factory that burned, they removed the building and put in a solar field that is now powering the water pollution control plant in Kendallville. And apparently it looks like they've been getting quite a bit of savings there. I do have the Baker Tilly information that was done for them that we'll share with everyone, because I think that's something that we could look at. And if they have this power issue out there for community corrections, if we in fact build the jail out there, you're going to have the exact same problem, an excessive power need out there at those high rates. So if you put one in that's sufficient for not only the community corrections but also the jail, it could save us quite a bit of money in the future. So I'd like to go back and revisit that, especially if there's money left in the ARPA money, which is where it came from. So.
Michelle, I had another question for you. How many residents do you have right now?
I'd love to tell you that. I got off a plane about 2 hours ago. I was on PTO, which I was supposed to be back yesterday, and then that's a long story. But I finally got back. You guys get the email on Thursday for sure? He's looking for it. So we send out, there's a small group of people that we send an email every week kind of saying how many we're serving in each area. So there's a list of those on the electronic monitored home detention, the residential, pretrial, alcohol monitoring, and so on and so forth, and then down to the classes and everything else that we offer there. So I didn't read it.
I know that they are supposed to be paying some amount of money. What does that look like at this point? Has there been some progress in people paying what they're supposed to be?
Yeah.
Or,
So last year.
Yeah.
You have
So this is
26.
27. Oh,
Shannon just
26 in
Shannon
residential?
just messaged me. You got 26.
She's watching me struggle. I didn't fall yet, Shannon. Yeah, they are. So we ran the numbers for last year, obviously about 6 months out of date, but I don't think this has changed. And we're about a 99% collection rate across programs. So that's not just the residential, but that's all of our programs. Part of the reason that we can do that is because they can earn incentives for being in compliance, which includes paying their fees. So if they haven't paid, they can't take passes, and there are certain other privileges they don't get if they don't pay. So for them, paying is part of this is how I get a little bit more freedom, and I get a little bit of time to go out in the community and do what I want if I'm in compliance with everything. And last year, and that figure here, last year we were right around $600,000 is what was collected. And so that's why we felt pretty confident budgeting that same amount in 2025 is what we would spend out of our project income.
Medical we're saving. All of their medical and dental bills.
Correct.
Pay all their own medical when they're with you.
Absolutely. And also, you know, with the state of the jail recently, would you also be paying for them to be housed in another county, which costs them a daily fee as well? So savings in all those areas.
When you say 99% collection rate, I just want to be clear, that means that they're paying, each person is paying 99, or they're paying all of their fees. Is that right? Not 99% of them are paying something. It's 99%.
Well, I ran it as a total. So out of the total that we assessed to everyone last year, we collected 99% of that. So there are a number of people who are not in compliance with the program. They are violated in some way. They go back to the jail. And a lot of times they will leave a balance for us because now they're in jail and they're not working and they're not very happy with us. So they don't feel the need to come back and pay later. That makes
Michelle,
sense.
does
Gotcha.
and I don't know what kind of money that is, but system now, the Trex system, where we can file and take any state refunds, or I believe it involves federal refunds. Not yet, but just state refunds. So we can encumber their tax refunds from the state.
Yes, so that's something we looked into, and actually Ryan's been looking into it even more also for the probation department. So we're kind of have a small committee that's looking at how to get that set up for both community corrections and probation.
I know that when they first set up that Trex program, Marion County got a windfall getting involved in that, if I remember right.
Out of your 600,000, you have about 6,000 you're saying that doesn't get collected.
Seems right.
1%.
Math, right? Yeah. Correct.
All right, all you math magicians.
Anybody else? Any questions or comments for Michelle?
The maintenance position is working well.
Yes, yes, very well. And I actually think one of the things I think that works the best with it is that we have a lot more ability to call on Larry or Evan, for example, if Rick isn't available that day. Or a lot of times they come out as a team. So they've been now doing our mowing, so we haven't had to pay for mowing like we've had in the past. And all three will come out and do it all at once and get it done. And then they'll go over to Sunny Meadows and they'll do it all there and get it done. And so I think they've been working really well as a team from what I've seen. And it's really been working out for us a lot better services and a lot quicker.
Anybody else? Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Appreciate
I
it.
do have a question for Michael. On the juveniles that would need to be housed either home detention or away from here, are we talking 5 a year, 10 a year, 50? What is there an average number?
Average number of juveniles themselves? There's never an average. The truth is, numbers never explain it. You could have 1 year where we have 3 young people involved in a serious offense. That may require that seriousness of an offense requires, it's more about number of days. The number of people that we have. There's a lot of people who misunderstand maybe a decade or more ago ACJC had contracts with each county, and they basically had an available bed or 2 available beds, and they just paid them a certain amount each year. That went away. So now it's about first come, first serve, and obviously it's, about need. And then you look at the terminology, like progression of seriousness of offense. The kids who are currently being placed now are for the type of offenses you would hope you would never see in a juvenile. I mean, we're talking about, the level 1, 2, and 3 kind of crimes. So we really have to be careful on who we place. So it's never an average. You can't predict it. I can have the type of offenses, obviously to put the safety of the community first. I could have 4 in for a month and none for 2. So it's just impossible to predict. We're just trying to create as many options and possibilities as that we can, both for law enforcement and for community safety. Because I know law enforcement can see things and they're on scene and think that, the seriousness looks more than the definition of the crime. And the risk assessment sometimes doesn't, they may not feel that takes it into consideration. And we'd like to have more options for them as well. To look at and say, if we could put them on parental advised home detention or directly on a bracelet, we want to be able to do that if the law enforcement officer looks at us and says, there's something we really need to take action on right now. And if we don't have any placement abilities right now, it looks like it could be concerning. People feel like they're not being able to take the action that's necessary to keep a family safe, a child safe, or the community safe.
Michael, real quick, back to security piece on your building over there. You do not have cameras in the building now?
We have a very small amount. We have ones that were left over from DeKalb County Community Corrections when they left because they were able to pay for them out of grant funding. We also have 1 in the juvenile lobby. That's it.
Okay,
but there's none for the rest of the main entrances. There's none for the rest of the floors. There's absolutely none on the 2nd floor to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Does anybody have anything else to come before the council? Hearing nothing.
Make a motion that we adjourn, Mr. President.
All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. Ladies, thank you. Thank you to the council. It was a very, very good 2 days here, long 2 days, but